Hey everyone, my name is Dwayne. I'm going to show you how I built my Skottle. So this is pretty straightforward. I'll walk you through it. It is a bit of a do-it-yourself thing, obviously. You can go out and purchase a pre-made Skottle from the professionals. The version that I made falls in line with most of what you see from the do-it-yourself groups or the do-it-yourself ideas. It will cost you right around $100, maybe plus or minus 10 bucks. So if you have a little bit of aptitude, you too can do this. So some tools you're going to need. You're going to need various wrenches, Phillips screwdriver. I used a 10mm box end wrench, but that wasn't the perfect fit. It was a little bit loose. It just happened to be what I had and it did the job. And I'll walk you through where I use all this. I used a piece of plywood that was 3/8 of an inch. And obviously you will need various components. Specifically, I recommend buying 5-foot sections of 1/2-inch conduit pipe from the electrical section of Lowe's or Home Depot. It doesn't matter, it's going to be the same material. But you want the 5-foot pieces, and I'll show you how to walk through that. You're going to need, let me see, 1, 2, 3 3/8-inch coarse nuts. You are going to need 3 3-foot sections of 3/8-inch coarse threaded rod, and you will use that whole 3-foot section. You will use all 3 of those as we make this up. 3 hose clamps that I'll show you guys in the video here in a second. I'm using 3 spring clamps right now, but may come up with something different in the future. You'll see how I'm using those. And I will show you how we are using the 3/8-inch by 16 by 1 1/8 inch couplers. Now these, you absolutely have to have the right size, and you'll know why in a moment. I am using the standard Coleman Burner. Whether you get the plastic foot on it or not kind of doesn't matter. So I think this was about $27. I have the Bayou Classic pan, so that is again about a $29 investment. I have one of the Skottle tops that I bought to make it a little bit easier for cooking. The most common one that I see is an Oris branded one. This is 15 inches in diameter. The Bayou Classic Discada pan itself is 17 inches, so it's perfect fit. You'll see that as we wrap up the video. This cover, I don't know, maybe $25, $29, depending on where you're gonna buy it. What I like about this one is it has a little hook, so I'll show you what that can be used for later. Not that you don't already know what a hook is used for. I have a rope and tackle bag that I'll show you guys that I carry this stuff in, and that's about it. So we'll get into this real quick, and I'll be back in a second. The Discada does actually come with, when you buy it from Bayou Classic, it comes with 3 stainless steel legs that thread into those spots on the body where our legs are going to go in. We're not using those stainless steel legs during this build at all. I keep them in that tack bag for carrying it around because you can then take the Discada on its own with those 3 legs and just throw them on a campfire the way they intended it originally, if you want to do that. Totally optional, totally up to you, but I went completely custom on the legs because I wanted them to spin in and out super easy and not have to worry about using anything other than that 1 threaded piece per leg that I built my legs around. That's it. All right, classic. This is the Bayou Classic pan. It's pretty straightforward. You can see mine's a little discolored because I was using it over the weekend. Orange bag, that's the carry bag that I have for it. It is a rope and tackle bag. It is round, comes out to about a 3-inch diameter or a 3-inch width when it's fully opened. So it's the perfect thing for carrying the Discada and the burner. Maybe the top I can fit in there. I don't know yet. I haven't really tried to box it up yet. I know the perfect thing for carrying the Discada and the burner. Maybe the top I can fit in there. I don't know yet. I haven't really tried to box it up yet. I know the 3-foot legs, that's not gonna fit in there. So I gotta do something separate with that. Now, I got this piece of plywood here, and this is a little shelf, and I'll show you guys in a moment how this all goes together. But I will show you that you want to cut on one side right around 15 inches, maybe a little bit longer. Actually, let's redo that. Let's give you guys the total length. It's closer to 17 inches, so that you want to come out to the tip of the triangle. So you want about 17 inches on each side. And then once you get the whole thing finished, you'll be able to cut this off and just, you know, shorten it down a little bit for aesthetics. But it's important that you have this slot here, kind of in the center of that tip, and you'll cut that in about 1 inch, and then you'll use that little bit of cutting to fine tune the fit of this shelf underneath the Bayou Classic pan. And that's really important because it's that shelf that burner sits on under the pan. Now, let's take a quick look at the legs here, okay? So up at the end of the legs, I've got a bolt in here, which is just a 3/8 inch standard bolt. I think this one's 1 inch long, coarse thread for all of these. And this allows me to do some minor height adjustments. Great for areas like my patio where we've got a very flat surface on it. Now I'm going to unscrew this, and you will see down here, I'll try to zoom this in for you guys. You will see down here that this whole thing threads directly into the Bayou Classic pan with, you got it, a 3/8 inch coarse rod. So this is the 3/8 inch, 3 foot long section of rod. And it's gonna stick out about that much, call it 3/4 of an inch or so. Now on that, I've got a nut that allows you to lock against one of those couplers. Now I'm gonna flip this over and show you how the coupler goes in here. So as you can see, the coupler fits down inside. And you may be wondering, oh, well, Dwayne, how do I get the coupler in there? You get the coupler in by hammering it into each end of the 1/2 inch pipe. It is a very tight friction fit. In fact, it will contort the end of the pipe slightly around the coupler when you do this. So that coupler goes in. You guys can't really see it, or maybe we can get the camera to force the focus down. Inside there is the end of the 3/8 inch rod. So the 3/8 inch rod is actually inside this entire leg. So starts right about here and goes all the way in the center of this through the other coupler, and then sticks out up that much where I can put the nut on, and that nut is locked against the coupler on this end. So then when you go to screw this in, it all screws in as a single unit, and it just screws in nice and tight. You can tighten it up with a wrench if you want. I don't. I just hand tighten it lightly, because as this pan heats up, it expands or it cools down, it contracts, and it does those motions. It'll tend to lock the leg in really tight. So you may not be able to get the leg out easily until it's cooled down a little bit after you're cooking, right? So just keep that in mind. If not, keep a little wrench with you and you'll be fine. So this is pretty much it, and we'll get to showing you how it all comes together. Now, these are just little pipe holders with rubber inserts in them. These are 5/8 inch, so a little over a standard 1/2 inch size, and you put it in just a regular little stainless steel nut and lock nut, or a bolt and lock nut on here, and lock that down, just tighten it up, and that's it. It'll stay there. It's not going to move. It's not going to go anywhere. It's nice and tight. The reason you're doing this is this defines the maximum height at which the shelf will sit on the legs. This will make sense when I put this thing right side up and show you guys how it looks assembled. So let's try that next. Now, this is the Skottle assembled, okay? You got your pan, the legs come down, the shelf sits in there, and then on that shelf, the burner just slides in like that, and it sits right there. You can position it how you like. In this instance, I can put it in, and you can see there's plenty of room underneath there. I could raise it up a little bit if I wanted to. It's completely serviceable. We've cooked a few meals on this the way it is, and it's been fantastic. Now, underneath this, you can see those clamps, those spring clamps that I mentioned. And I simply use them to hold this piece in place, this piece of plywood. and that's it. Those are 4-inch spring clamps from Home Depot. Pretty simple, pretty cheap. I think they were about $2.98 a piece. These little clamps were like 38 cents a piece. Various nuts and bolts, maybe a couple of bucks altogether. It's a pretty cheap assembly, I have to say. So once you fire this thing up, obviously, you know, you can move that around under the pan. There's no need to. It's pretty well centered. The nice thing about this is on the sides of this piece of plywood, you can put hooks on there and then hang the top for the cooktop for the Skottle off of that, or a utensil if you want. If you're gonna hang a utensil there, just keep in mind that if you got dogs that camp with you around home, they'll probably start licking at your tongs and various utensils. So, you know, maybe you don't do that. But this is the complete unit, and this is it. It works like a charm. It is fantastic. Sears as cast iron should. I did some extra seasoning for the Bayou Classic Discada when I got it. I ran it through a few cycles of seasoning. I used grapeseed oil on it just because it's a high temperature oil. You know, you can use whatever method you like best. I was pretty straightforward with it. Heat it up, oil it down, let it sit for a few minutes, let it cool down, reheat, re-oil, wipe off. That cycle 3 times, and we were off to the races. And let me tell you, it works. You know, we had no issues with sticking. Cleanup was a breeze. Put some hot water, or put some water on there, boiled it, scraped it with a wooden spatula. Everything came off beautifully. When it was all done, gave it a light oiling, threw it in the shed for the night. Everything was perfectly fine. So loving this setup. Gonna work out a way to transport the legs separately, but this is the a version of a do-it-yourself Skottle right here. The paint is pretty simple. It's a Krylon paint called Patriot Blue. I just paint the steel legs. I hit the steel legs with a little bit of steel wool just to rough them up a little bit and get any oils that might have been there off of them. The paint sticks okay. It gets scratched off fairly easily, so this one's a bit beat up. I may have to touch them up again. But this is it, gang. It's very straightforward. You know, I don't think you guys need part numbers for nuts and bolts and things like that. Honestly, if you're looking for part numbers for a nut on this project, maybe you shouldn't be off-roading or overlanding. It's really that simple. And I mean, straight from the heart, it is that simple to pull this together. Everything that is used for the legs is a 3/8 inch, and it is a coarse thread. So you can't go wrong with that. Whether it's a nut or a bolt, that's what you're looking for. 3/8 inch coarse thread. After that, 1-inch bolt. You're looking for any nut that matches that thread diameter, which is easy to find. And then you want a 3-foot section of threaded rod. And you're obviously going to use 3 of those, 1 for each leg. The biggest, hardest part of this project is actually threading that 3-foot rod through the couplers that are in each end of these pipes. And it's not even so much getting the far end aligned once you put it in. It's gripping the actual thread and trying to turn the rod when it's most of the way through. That becomes a little bit difficult. What I did was I put 2 nuts on the end, locked them off against each other, and then just use a ratchet to flip the whole thing around, and that helped me thread it in relatively quickly. I mean, it took about 5 minutes to thread the whole thing in. Once you get it at the bottom, it's unlikely that it will line up perfectly the first time with the coupler. It will just kind of lock up. You'll feel it get tight. And so that's the hint. And all you do is hold the thing vertically, hold the actual pipe vertically, and then just by hands on the nut, just with your fingers, you'll be able to feel, and you can move that rod around inside by moving the legs slightly. You'll be able to feel if it lines up, and it will, with a few tries, it'll just line up naturally with the threads that are in there, and then you're off to the races, threaded on through. Pro tip, even though each one of those rods is sold as a 3-foot length, the lengths vary slightly. One of the rods that we got home was about 3/8 of an inch shorter than the others. So we had to compensate for that by taking one of the couplers that was inside here, and we actually drove that in deeper. So inside that section, the coupler that's in there, we drove it deeper to compensate. So, and I say that, it's actually down here at the foot that we drove it deeper. So we came in the pipe up this way, and it's a little bit deeper, and we use the bolt on the bottom to compensate for that extra length that was needed. But works perfectly fine. Everything is nice and tight, and I mean, you guys can see this thing is, let me see if I can get a bit of a distance shot here, and I'll show you guys that this thing is pretty darn stable. So, like, it moves obviously, but it's actually really stable. And, you know, you'll be able to cook on this no problem. I mean, we did 8 hamburgers, a steak, and an onion all in one cooking on this thing, and it was perfect. So it's, I think it's a great project. With everything I'm showing you guys, you should be able to have this wrapped up. I'm gonna say morning of running around for parts, and then a couple hours in the afternoon. That evening, you're cooking on this thing. And that includes time to season it if you want to. The Discada comes pre-seasoned, but hey, it's cast iron. Why not give it another good seasoning? It is a little bit rough, the cast iron, but I'm totally fine with the way it is right now. Like, you can see that it's a little bit rough. It's not the perfect smooth, but that's sand cast iron, so that's what you get. Worked perfectly for us after we seasoned it. We didn't have any issues with food sticking, so I'm happy with the way it is. I'm going to use it the way it is. I'm really not worried about getting a glass smooth finish on this. So I encourage you all, go build your own Skottle. This is how you thread your long 3-foot rod into the 3-foot leg section. Put a ratchet. I'm using a 15 millimeter over my 3/8 coupler. It's a little bit loose fit, but it'll do the job here. And off you go. Takes a while, but it works.